is the industry leader in both service and unique events in the TCG arena. Whether it's running the largest community-run tournaments for Flesh and Blood or providing service with a generosity that is unique to the Realm games, you can count on the Realm for an unforgettable experience. Check out their website at realmgamingnetwork.com for details about their $50,000 Flesh and Blood tournament circuit happening all across North America. But check out everything else going on at the Realm, including tournaments for all kinds of other experiences. And just for you, ISP listeners, use the code INSTANT5, that's INSTANT 5, to get 5% off your checkout when you're buying from the Realm. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode number 122 of the Instant Speed Podcast, brought to you, as always, by the Realm Gaming Network. Go to the realmgamingnetwork.com. Check out what's going on there. I have with me here quite a treat, friends, as I usually do. This is, I'm going to get this correct, Trevor, because I was a little off the mark here. I have with me the director of Premier Play for Legend Story Studios. Basically handles all the major events, the Premier Play, the Pro Tours, the Worlds, Nationals, things like that. Welcome, Trevor Baker. How are you, Trevor?
I'm good. Good to be with you, Flake. Yeah, excited to jump on the podcast.
This is your first time. This is your first time here. You and I have spoken countless times before, obviously, but this is the first time that I have you in my arena.
Yeah. It's first time you've been able to pin me down. It's been it's difficult to find a time these days, but I'm happy to be here to have a chat with you. We've got kind of Pro Tour behind us, and we can just have a nice casual conversation today. So yeah.
Let's just talk. Let's shoot the breeze. There's nothing really pressing except for everything that everybody wants to talk about, but we will get to that. We do have some business to attend to first, which is last week on the program, I asked you, or rather, DM Armada asked you to go ahead and let us know what is your favorite of the new Transcend cards, the artwork, which is all phenomenal, and we asked you what your favorite was, because I've got $10 of store credit to give away to Cusco TV, who says, my favorite Transcend card is by far Rising Sun Setting Moon, with an honorable mention to Passover. I just know both these cards are going to look incredible in cold foil, and I absolutely adore the art and colors on both of these cards, as well as the stories they tell within the art. I agree. I think that all of them look beautiful, but Cusco, reach out to me via DM, Discord, Twitter, however you want to do it, and I will hook you up with a $10 gift card to the Realm Gaming Network. All right, Trevor. So let's get to it here, and before we dive into what's going on, what you've already had your hand in, let's go back a little bit here and talk a little bit about your history within TCGs. The first one you played and how you got involved with it from a career standpoint. We're going way back here. So what is the Trevor Baker origin story?
Origin story. Gosh, I mean, we could spend a few hours going through this, but I'll try and keep it brief enough. I mean, look, I feel like for a lot of people as a kid, you got introduced to some sort of TCG over time. For me, I totally grew up during the moment when, Pokemon was really, kind of taking off in America, especially when I was kind of like grade school, middle school sort of thing was when it was really starting to come about. Although I never actually played Pokemon as a kid. I obviously, would have cards and, played with other kids at lunch, and always everyone's cards got stolen or damaged, whatever. But then there was the first game that I actually played was a game called WWF Raw Deal at the time.
Oh man, Trevor!
So going back into the tank there, I remember having my Chris Jericho deck. I would always play against, so I'd make people discard, and then I would play. I played a bunch of the different wrestlers. I mean, the Triple H decks, you had the biggest hand size. And I don't know if you ever played Raw Deal, but that was...
a very good friend of mine by the name of Christo was actually immensely huge into this, but it's not just him. It's that there's a lot of people who listen to this show, one of which is Brian Basoka, who is huge into, obviously, wrestling, but WWF Raw Deal. I never played it, but I was around it a lot. So when you're talking about Jericho, I knew it was discard. We talk about Triple H, I knew it was hand size. One of them was all about reversals. Was that like Eddie Guerrero or something like that? Or
Maybe I don't know if I ever played Eddie's deck. There's a couple other fun ones. I remember making a Jeff Hardy deck, so it was all about the high risk moves and everything. And then one of the control decks, the lock decks at the time, was a right to censor, and you would basically it was like a prison deck sort of thing. So you would just stop everything that they did. It was a totally different kind of concept. Of a deck, but yeah, there's a lot of different like nuances in that game. The early era of that game was a bit rough because you just like drew your hand and then you started playing, and then a couple sets in they added this thing like the backlash deck, and you could actually kind of like set the stage, similar to how like in Flesh and Blood you set the stage with your gear, right? Like your equipment and your weapons and stuff. Originally, Raw Deal didn't have any of that sort of like game setting, so it was very high variance. But then over time, they kind of had ways that you could set the table with your backlash deck. So yeah,
I'm waiting to. I want to just roll up to a Flesh and Blood tournament where instead of like two Kodachis, you have like you're showing up with like Devon Dudley and like a table and a chair as your sort of like your two offhands, or your equipment is just a stack of like a bunch of ladders and stuff. Like that would be amazing. And
yeah.
I'm starting to see a little bit of that joy kind of creep into your face there, like reminiscing about a game as cool as a Raw Deal was.
Yeah. No, it was a good time. I mean, so I played that through kind of like middle school into like early high school, and then I feel like at some point Magic enters like a lot of people's pathway, and of course it did for me as well. I played Magic for a handful of years. That's where I made by far the most connections in the industry, was through Magic. Also made a number of connections through the Upper Deck games as well, Yu-Gi-Oh, and obviously Yu-Gi-Oh's with Konami now, but and Versus System and WoW TCG. So made a number of contacts through Upper Decks games as well. But yeah, then with Wizards. Then went into university. Kind of took a step away when I was in, university, because at those times it was like, all about having a good time with your friends, meeting girls and all that, good stuff, and going out to party and things like that, and traveling a little bit. And then I always just feel like somehow this industry always like, sucks you back in. So then after university, I had some opportunities to get involved again, doing stuff for some number of like Magic Grand Prix, and then got involved like significantly in the Magic Grand Prix sort of circuit and everything, and that kind of led to a lot of the work opportunities that I did before the pandemic, being heavily involved with kind of the global production of all of the Magic Grand Prix that took place around the world. So like at the peak, we were doing like 55 what would essentially be kind of like calling equivalent or above, like events around the world every year. And then, March of 2020 hit, and then that whole like world, just went away basically overnight. But yeah, that's a very abbreviated, history from, TCGs as a kid to Magic to kind of working in the industry to pandemic to then having some folks that helped get me introduced to Flesh and Blood over the pandemic, and one thing led to another. So
and here we are.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people might not know is that you are part of that sort of brain trust that have grown the OP system of Flesh and Blood to what it is today. And we've gone from 2023, $1 million for the Premier Play system, to what we are now, $1.5 million. More dates, a second Pro Tour added again. We're going back to an extra Pro Tour. The money obviously involved, but beyond that are the locations, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I want to ask you, having been there as a player, having been there on this side of the business, the importance of an organized play system. And this is something wherein myself, having been involved in so many games, like you as well over the years, the first thing that whenever a new game comes out is people will always ask me if I'm interested in it. They'll say, what's the organized play? What's the tournament system like? Is there a circuit? What can I win? What can I accomplish? It is now ingrained itself within the fabric of success for a TCG beyond collectability, beyond the fun factor, and things like that. Could you comment or maybe elaborate more on what the importance of a good OP system means? Like, what does it mean to the success of a card game?
I think probably the biggest thing is it gives the game a lot of gives the game a sense of purpose, right? Like, it's one thing to go and just buy a product off the shelf and take it home and maybe open it, maybe play with it, maybe just put it in a binder. But like, if you actually give people a reason to come together, like, it actually can create like a community and a following, and like it gives you like a reason to engage with it. It gives you like some purpose, some desire, some interest in like seeing what's coming out next, seeing where can I go to interact with other people who also like to play this game that I'm interested in. Where can I go and find out more information about it? Where can I go and find other like-minded people, and these sorts of things. So I think without organized play, your game just doesn't really have a sense of purpose, right? It's just a collectible object otherwise. And to be fair, there's a lot of people that do interact with TCG still in a very sort of whimsical or collectible way, and for some people that might be all the time that they have. But the fact that there is an OP sphere that exists, even some of those people that maybe don't have a lot of time to go out and play in organized play, they may be following what's happening on YouTube, or they may be reading other articles, or diving into the lore, or that sort of thing. So I think it helps really shape the greater world for the purpose that TCG kind of serves, and I think it's like very critical to everything that we do with Flesh and Blood, because it obviously kind of like is it's part of the DNA of what Flesh and Blood is, right? So yeah,
it's fascinating to me because I mean that mentality does bleed its way into everything else I do, or the other kind of things that I do casually for fun. Wherein even if I want to just fire up a game of Overwatch or Halo or something with my friends, it hits different when there's something at stake, when you're playing on the ranked ladder, or there's an achievement to be had, or a new pinnacle that you can reach, when you're climbing and clawing towards an outcome that will either grant you a reward in a tangible sense, or even in an intangible sense, like the pride that you get or the title that you earn. I think that having a good OP system is important, and you've done a great job of growing what Flesh and Blood has established. And I feel like there's also going to be challenges when the game is only accessible in a paper format. And obviously there are outlets out there like TTS or Talishar or whatever, where people can play. But from a competitive standpoint, it has been and will always be a paper first thing. But I mean, you've come from Magic, you've worked within Magic and things in that capacity. Magic has a dedicated online official game that they do run tournaments for, official sanctioned tournaments for. Do you sometimes, and obviously we're not going towards that, but do you sometimes think like, man, everything could just flow much better, or it would feel so much more different when people can either qualify online or do this online, or there'd be so much more available? Does that ever kind of creep into your mind about what the OP system would look like if there was a digital client for people to connect to?
I mean, I think one of the hard parts is you look at some of that, especially what happened with Magic during those years where they were really where Arena was starting to pick up and they started putting a lot of emphasis and resources into it, it kind of took a lot of the soul out of what was going on, though, because it almost feels a little bit soulless, like it's just somebody sitting behind a computer screen. Your screen name is, I don't know, like Dice Radio or something, and you just like are somebody that just won this match or whatever, and you're not even like a person because you're just your handle. So it's tough. It's harder to build some of the narratives around people as well when you only have somebody from behind a computer screen. Yeah, I mean, I think it's challenging in certain regards, but obviously I think it helps serve a bit of a purpose for maybe some of the underserved areas around the world where maybe that is the only way that people can engage with a particular game. If you don't have a lot of support in your region, or you're living in an area that doesn't have a big community or something like that. So I understand the role that it plays for a lot of people, and people who just want to get reps, right? Like if it's midnight or 1 a.m. and you want to log on somewhere and play some games with somebody, like it definitely serves a purpose for people. But I think when it comes to what we're trying to do from an OP perspective, the stories that you get to tell about the people that are actually playing the game, the emotions that you get to capture on people's face, the aspirational path that you get to follow to become the next Pablo Pintor or Arthur Trehay, or these kinds of folks, right? Like it's harder to portray that in like in an online sense, right? You don't get the same sort of it doesn't provoke the same kind of like emotional response, and I think like being grounded in reality, it's a different medium, right? So I think there's obviously different games have different lanes that they want to be in, and I think for Flesh and Blood, we kind of know where our identity is, and that's with bringing people together in the Flesh and Blood. So I don't know if that got you the answer that you wanted, but that's my honest reply. So,
and that's fair, and I think a lot of people will echo that sentiment where it does feel different. I mean, playing against a faceless opponent, playing against a screen name, essentially. I mean, I'll go back to my Halo days of like, I don't know who you are, therefore I will teabag you after I energy sword you. Like that, like again, but if I knew who you were, if I was playing against you and I knew who you were, I might not be that disrespectful. Now, I'm not that type of player, so you can hold on to your hate mail in that regard. But you're right, because when you're at an event, it hits different when you're interacting with that person, but that's the spirit, like you mentioned, of Flesh and Blood in general, is bringing back to those pillars of what makes gaming fun or successful or good. It's being there in the Flesh and Blood and enjoying that common language of gaming and fun. I mean, the answer that I was expecting, there was no answer I was expecting necessarily. It feels sometimes where, and this kind of alludes to a whole other conversation that we don't have to have, but just the fact of what does a digital client open up for the game and what does it take away? And maybe that's Pandora's box that you don't want to knock on, because it might open up some things, but it might tear down so many other things. So we won't even get into that, Trevor.
Yeah, that's all good.
Not worth it. That said, you have put in a lot of effort for Flesh and Blood's OP system, one of which where I hear it from many other sources. I hear it from a lot of people who play other games. It is a enviable circuit. It is definitely a system, and that a lot of other people are like, man, maybe I don't like the game so much, but that circuit looks so good to put my effort into. And I have really been somebody who has waved the flag of saying, hey, if you want a new game, and I'll say this like flat out, I'm very into Star Wars Unlimited. I'm very ingrained in that culture as well. And I've been in the ear of the developers saying that, hey, I'm coming from Flesh and Blood, where their tournament circuit is incredible. The money, the opportunity, the this, the that, if you want people to dive into your game and take it as seriously, you need to have that $1 million price tag. And I'm going to ask you, when it comes to Flesh and Blood's OP system, what is it that makes it so damn good compared to others that are out there? And you don't need to throw anyone under the bus necessarily, but if we're talking about what Flesh and Blood does, it does successfully, what are those things that makes it so great?
I mean, we bring everyone together. We provide these opportunities where the community can come together all over the world, and I think that's like a big part of it is that we can all get to experience life together as a community wherever we go, right? And I could draw on my most recent adventure, which was to Thailand, to Phuket, right? And so, you know, it's kind of amazing when you think about it that we conceptualized an event, we picked a location, we found we curated a location, we figured out an appropriate date, we found a suitable host venue, and like we created this reason for like 250 to 300 people to travel to Phuket, Thailand, to enjoy like something that everyone as a community like enjoys playing or being a part of the Flesh and Blood community. And the fact that we could create something that brought those people together to travel to somewhere in the world that they may have not otherwise thought about going to on that particular weekend or that particular place. Like I don't know another TCG that is providing those types of avenues for people to go and just like appreciate life like around the world. Like, yes, of course, there are many other TCGs that are hosting world championships or pro tours or other big events, and they're picking, maybe just like the most practical, like central, location, Las Vegas. And trust me, we'll do plenty of events in Las Vegas over time, right? Or Chicago or in Amsterdam or whatever, right? Like they're picking very, practical locations for these. And there's a lot of places that we need to do events that are very accessible, but the fact that we have these opportunities where we can explore the world with you, no other TCG is doing that. And honestly, I don't think any other TCG is going to do that because it's like there's a level of involvement and risk that comes along with that to be quite frank, we are running unopposed, and it's working to our favor, right? Like the fact that you get to be a part of a community where we get to go and like conquer the world together is like pretty cool, right? So I think that is just is something that we go to these other places around the world. Phuket's just one example, but we explore Europe together, we explore the Americas together. We go to Queenstown in New Zealand, right, together, and these sorts of things. And I know that everyone can't be there for every step of the journey, and I can't even be there for every step of the journey, but we provide these opportunities where you can come and see some familiar faces, meet your friends from far away, or go and meet that pro player that you aspire to, or somebody who's a content creator that you really appreciate what they're doing, and you see that they're going to be there, and you get a chance to say hi and catch up and show your appreciation for them, or maybe a favorite vendor or artist or whoever it may be. And nobody else is doing that, right? Like nobody else is providing these opportunities. In fact, some of the other game systems are actively limiting people's ability to go around the world because they've created organized play systems that are region locked, and because they're very focused on people just qualifying within their zone. And trust me, we have our national championship system that is very sort of pride based within your country, and that serves a very specific purpose in Flesh and Blood organized play. But But a lot of these other systems, they go beyond that. If you qualify in a particular region, you can only play, in the next events in that region. You don't, it's not like you get a PTI that you can go and, exchange somewhere else or whatever. You're forced to stay in that territory. And so it's like, it's for us, we're basically just running on a post, right? Like we've got this sort of lane, and I'm very happy that we get to be in this space, because I think it brings a lot of joy to people's lives. And whether you get to travel the world with your mates that you play the game with, or maybe you get to bring your spouse onto to other trips around the world. I'm very fortunate that I get to be in this role, that we get to kind of create these experiences for people. And that brings me a lot of joy. So that's a
Imagine.
very long-winded answer, but I'm very passionate about like the purpose that we serve here, and I'm confident that we are like leading the way here. So yeah.
Well, imagine region locking Brody Spurlock. Like that would his head would explode. Like you can't tie that kid down to any one continent, let alone country
Right.
or anything to that degree. But
Yeah.
one other thing that you mentioned that I think that is important to note here is that while other companies may seem, when they see that they're unopposed, they'll throttle back, they'll relent a little bit and conserve energy, as it were, to continue that analogy. Like, when Usain Bolt sees that he's 10 meters ahead of the next dude, and he'll throttle back a little bit, he'll coast. What I like about this is that if you guys are thinking that you're running unopposed, does this further motivate you to create even greater distance, or is this a situation wherein you're like, we can maybe allocate more resources somewhere else or focus somewhere else, we can just coast here, we can just kind of keep this and ride the momentum? But it seems to me like from 23, wherein a lot of other companies were like, well, shit, it looks like Flesh and Blood is really making us look bad in terms of their system. You guys just said, screw it, we're doubling down, or we're hammering down even harder. We're going 1.5 million. We're going 2 pro tours. Do you approach it from the capacity of, we always know that there's competition out there and we want to just continuously maximize that distance between us and the number 2, or is there another approach to it? Do you guys even care what everyone else is doing?
I think it's very important to know what others are doing, and to be, always be kind of cognizant of your competition, because even if they may be doing something different, there might be aspects of it that you could appreciate, and that sort of thing. So I mean, I'm always kind of keeping my eyes and ears open to what is happening in the world around. To the point about coasting, obviously not. Like we're trying to double down and lean even heavier into some of this sort of stuff. I think honestly, for me, I still feel that we have a lot of opportunity before we're even firing on all cylinders. Like, to be quite honest, since when I joined the studio until now, there's been a lot of ramping up. Like 2023, we had to build out a lot of runway, and we had to get some distance in front of us in terms of getting events announced far enough in advance so that people could actually start planning these sorts of things. Like Worlds last year was not announced as early as we would have liked it to been, and this sort of thing. And obviously for 2024, I think we've done a much better job of kind of upholding that promise of giving people a reasonable notice. And there's still things that we need to improve on in terms of getting full event details out a little bit further and giving people a little bit better visibility and these sorts of things. But I think broadly speaking, at least now people have a good sense of where we're going to be for 80 to 90% of this year. People kind of know where we're headed. So I think when we think about this sort of thing, I think we need to continue what we're doing, but doing it better. So there's procedural things that we can improve. But there's certainly things where I want to do like more of it as well. So part of it is, when we want to do the next, kind of like calling Phuket sort of thing. It's like, what can we do better for next time, and these kinds of things. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a bit of both, Matt. Like, I think there's, um, uh, you know, refining the process of what we're doing, and then also kind of like looking at ways of how can we like further invest into this. So, yeah.
So there's some questions coming in about the OP system, and one of which is from Yuha. Yuha is a pro player, exceptionally talented, and asking basically, in the current OP system with 4 tiers, there are about between 2 to 4 different types of events per tier. What's the weakest link, or sort of the forgotten event that might need a little bit of an upgrade? Is what's being asked here. Some might say that, hey, skirmish season's feeling kind of weak, or battle hardens can use a little push in terms of prizing or whatnot. What is lagging behind, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, so when we look at the OP calendar, right, like getting the second Pro Tour back onto the calendar created a lot of like compression within the calendar of like, how do we fit everything into the calendar? And so it's not just adding, the second Pro Tour, but you have to add the extra qualification cycle, for it. And so that's an extra 4 weeks onto the calendar. And we also expanded the qualification windows from 3 weeks to 4 weeks for RTNs and ProQuest. So all of a sudden we went from having like 6 like weeks in stores for qualification last year to 12 now, because you got 3 times 4. So that eats a lot of the calendar up, and then you add in obviously the battle hardens, the callings, Pro Tours, Worlds. It is true that skirmish season this year is only going to have 2. There will be only 2 skirmish seasons this year currently. One being in like late August, and one being in kind of like late November, early December. Um, kind of filling some of the gaps that we have in the calendar. I think that is probably one of the programs that will need a little bit of attention, as far as kind of like some growth opportunities there, just so that it continues to bring forward a lot of purpose. I mean, when skirmish first started, right, it was like during a time where people were still in COVID lockdowns and things like that, and a lot of these skirmishes took place online, and they were like these very first like opportunities for people to come together, and then they were one of the early like in-store programs as well, and then obviously the RTN seasons and then ProQuest seasons that followed. So yeah, I think there's clearly like a focus there for it, but now we need to kind of make sure that we've got like a very clear purpose for what the skirmish campaign looks like in store. I mean, battle hardens is still fill a very important role, right? Like we do. If you count all of the callings and above, that takes out about 18 of the battle hardens. So then there's still about another 32 battle hardens that we'll have over the course of the year. And the battle hardens allow us to reach a lot of communities that we can't as easily serve with, say, a calling or a pro tour. So they allow us to kind of connect with a lot of the other communities. And it also allows us to kind of cultivate potential calling destinations in the future, right? So if we think that there's a market where we want to bring a calling to in the future, we can give them 1 or 2 battle hardens over time to see if we can help seed some of the demand and interest in different parts of the world, because we're paying attention to all of these events, right? It's not like we're just saying, okay, we're going to do a battle hardened in Spain or Greece or Brazil or whatever, and we're just saying, okay, like that's enough. Like that's not what's happening. We're doing these events, and we want to see what actually happens and what the community's response to those is. Like when 170 some odd people showed up to the battle hardened in Manila in the Philippines, like that's a big effing deal, and we take notice. And to be quite honest, they're going to get a calling very soon. Like, and I'm happy to share that on here that there is going to be a calling coming to the Philippines very soon, and it is like significant when you show up and you represent your community, around the world. Like, this is a big deal, and we pay attention. So I know that some people, occasionally, like, we get a lot of things like, when is, calling whatever happening, or calling whatever happening. Like, there's a good chance it can and will happen, but we take like measured steps to get there, right? And so yeah, battle hardens serve a very important purpose in the program. We talked about skirmish. Obviously, I think things like RTN and ProQuest, like, it's very clear what they're doing, right? Like, they're a qualification program in your store that qualifies you for your country's national championship, or for the coming pro tour. So I think that's all pretty clear. I think people have a good sense of what callings are: pro tour, world championship, national championship. Obviously, armories are your weekly um, in-store event. So I don't know. I think we've covered almost
It's a
everything
lot
there,
of it.
right?
I mean, it's pretty robust.
Yeah.
And
So yeah.
question flying in here from Clark Jansen, asking, what changes or improvements in the OP's program that you're responsible for are you most proud of accomplishing since you've joined LSS?
Okay. Well, there's been a few things. One of the things we did very early on is we changed a little bit the setup for the um, the battle hardened setup. So initially, before I came on, battle hardened, you would have the BH itself, and then there would be like some additional sort of like season event. Sometimes it might be a skirmish, sometimes it might be a ProQuest, sometimes it might be something else. And one of the things that I quickly wanted to standardize there is I wanted to make sure that the Sunday event that would happen at a battle hardened would consistently have like a high enough caliber like type of event that people would feel like confident in both hosting a battle hardened, but also traveling, as a player to go to one. So we quickly made those like PTI events like consistently. This year now they're obviously called like ProQuest Plus, which is essentially just a PTI event that now has a better prize kit. And that was like a very important thing that we wanted to make sure that both for people organizing these battle hardens. And one other thing we did for battle hardens is we quickly gave battle hardens like a participation promo. So before I joined, there was not participation promos for battle hardens. We added those as well. So that way, when you're paying, 50 USD approx to like get into these things, you at least felt like you were like getting something like tangible, as well for your experience. So like, so revamping and just kind of like re-energizing the battle hardened program was something that I quickly wanted to make sure that we took some action on, and I feel like that's definitely helped, like, kind of like box up that experience like quite nicely. Yeah, other things that are of interest. This over the past 2 years, we've kind of tweaked the qualification for national championships going into world championships. So before, there was like a lower number of invites, and they were just PTIs that were given out to people who placed in the top of the national championships. Now we've kind of transitioned that to just being world championship invites, but we're actually giving out more invites there. So that was like a very important philosophical thing. Like, we wanted the pathway to be: you go to your RTN, you go to your national championship qualifies you for the world championship. Like, it was a very important thing that we wanted to do, and we're now giving more invites out to Worlds this year than we ever have before. Like, for example, the United States, last year, only 8 people qualified for Worlds. 16 people will now qualify for Worlds, and there's a lot of other regions that saw an increase of 2 or 4 additional invites for their country's nationals. So, little little tweaks here and there of really like tightening up the systems a little bit. Obviously, the side event promos at Callings have been a very huge success. Like the Ravenous Rabble was incredible. When we were kind of conceptualizing it, we actually didn't know what the artwork was going to be for that card at first, and we're like, I don't know, we'll see. I guess what happens. I mean, it's a generic playable card, but like, are people really going to go like crazy for it? And then we saw the artwork come back from Miswarty, and it's just like, this is amazing. So, and then obviously we've got the Oasis Respite coming out with the next cycle as well. So, really kind of turning the Callings into a really purposeful 3-day sort of thing, because that's another thing. The Callings were not always consistently 3 days everywhere around the world before 2023. Some of the overseas events were maybe only 2 or 2.5 days, and we've kind of consistently made Callings more of a 3-day, purposeful event series. So I would say those are a few of the big things there. Obviously, creating just more like community moments for people to be a part of the big shows. And to be honest, like I also when I talk about some of the things that we've done, it's not just me. It's my team, right? It's Nico, it's Tom, it's Alex. They're the ones who are really rolling their sleeves up and getting their hands dirty to make all of this stuff happen. I get to be a part of the strategy conversation with the rest of the guys, but they're the ones that actually go out and implement a lot of this stuff. So they all just make me look good, and I'm so appreciative for them. So
Nico's awesome. Every time I see Nico, I give him a big hug. He's a good guy.
Awesome. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit here about a lot of people inquiring about XP Elo. I know that's been a little bit of a hot button topic. Again, these are aspects that I don't really devote too much of my attention to, because I don't qualify for things. I'm not that good, and the Elo to me is just a magic number. But at the same time, for a lot, they live and die by that number that's associated to their name. There has been a little bit of a shift that's occurred. A question coming in from Andy Modell asking, lots of folks have criticisms over XP and Elo for qualifying. The former can be potentially abused by grinders, and the latter can be super swingy, and many strong players dislike losing Elo even with positive records at events. Are you rethinking point-based invites at all? And you got to think, because a lot of the conversations that I'm around, that I don't necessarily have a horse in any of these races, but a lot of it is like, I can't play in this because I risk losing Elo. Even if I go 7-2, that's going to harm me and my Elo, which then might put me in a worse spot for qualifying for particular things. There's a lot of give and take here, because I definitely understand the grinder aspect. The first nationals I ever qualified for was through just playing the crap out of this game. So I'm curious if there's any potential revisions, rethinking, or what the stance is regarding that.
So, I mean, I think Elo is a pretty accurate reflection of people's, performance. I think one of the things that sometimes often gets lost is that it's easy to rise through the ranks. It's harder to defend once you're at the top, right? And like, and that's kind of how it's supposed to be, right? Like it's, in any sport, right? Like you can go out and win a title, right? And it's still hard, but you can go out and win it once. But to go out and repeat, and to do it again and again, and to have a dynasty, right? Like, it's why it's very difficult in sports, also difficult in flesh and blood, right? Like, it's hard to stay on top. And I think it pushes people, and maybe it does get discouraging sometimes where, you can tumble through the standings, but when you tumble back down, it does get easier to come back up, right? And so I think that's one of the things that does get kind of lost in this, is that as you rise through the ranks, it's harder to keep your position at the top. But that's kind of how it's supposed to be. So, I think the best players in the world don't have much to really fear. Like especially, if you're looking at that top 75 qualification for, for Amsterdam, right? Like, do you think Brody is afraid when he goes to Atlanta after going to Phuket? Do you think he's like asking himself like, I probably can't pick up too many elo points here, should I not play? Like I don't think that is going through his mind at all, right? Like he's hungry to play the game, and people who decide to just like camp on their rating, their performance is probably just going to suffer because they're not getting out there and competing, right? So at the end, I think it's one of those things that for people, it's going to solve itself for a lot of people. And over time, the system gets better, right? Because the more matches get played, the more that people's relative rating and relative skill rank will kind of sort themselves out. So I don't know if it's maybe if it's just too easy for me to say this, but I trust the process. And I think also by switching to overall elo, as much as maybe that irritated some people who were like limited specialists or constructed specialists, as a whole, it actually created a system where people have much higher match history, like in terms of their depth of match history and the depth of rating movements that happened for people. Having that all reconciled in one rating in general gave people a much deeper understanding of their elo, and it actually helped a lot of players who were in regions that maybe didn't have quite as many rated matches under their belt. When you added those, when you brought those things together in one overall rating, it actually helped to elevate a lot of those players that maybe didn't have that deep of a match history in one or the other, but if they were consistently a good player, it actually kind of pushed them further along in their rating growth. So for me, I think it's every system has some quirks to it, I suppose, but in general, I trust the process. To answering, kind of the thing about XP, I mean, there will be some other achievement-based things that we're looking at for XP as we've kind of worked through some updates with Gem and moving people's profiles into Gem. The idea that you might have like badges or other rewards in the future that you unlock in your profile, and you get some wallpapers or skins or other cool trophies or other things like that. Those things will come over time. It's further into the pipeline as far as those things are, but we do want to have other cool achievements that you can hit with XP, but those are largely not managed by me and my team, but it is something that like XP is will still serve a purpose, even though it's not like directly informing like competitive play right now. So,
okay. I mean, all the achievement hunters out there like myself, the ones who want to just be completionists and get points and bank them, and then they want to flip them into something. And that was one thing that I think I had suggested a while ago. Is like at a certain point, like I feel like if you hit 1,000 career XP, maybe you get sent like I don't know a cold foil of something or whatever, but who knows? I mean, that's down the line. It's also a good time, I think, or maybe we're past due here, to explain to people that what you're responsible for is basically all of the OP related things that occur outside of the LGS. So your battle hardens and above, or whatever those are. So when it comes to store related things like armories and promos and things like that, that's not your domain. So you can't necessarily answer that. I know that we did get a bunch of questions concerning that. That's this isn't the tree we're barking up right now, so we can kind of
shout out to Alan Hale, to Francesca, to Ahmed, to the greater account managers and organized play team that we have. And we have many around the world, Moy and Laura and Roman and Lamberto, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody as well, but we have and Pedro in Brazil. So we have a great team of in-store organized play account managers around the world. I appreciate everything that they do in keeping up with what happens, because to be quite honest, the lion's share of games that get played are the games that get played in your local game store. What we do actually represents a very, very small fraction of the total games that get played in Premier Organized Play. Obviously, we have a lot of spotlight over us, but we don't, what happens in your local game store is far more representative of what happens, every day in flesh and blood. So huge shout out to the Organized Play team there with everything that they do
Sounds
to support
good.
your LGS.
We're running out of time here, but I do want to say, so from Adam Jessel is also asking from Patreon, asked the question about the XP in the future. So there's going to be potential something that you can kind of cash in or bank in on with those. I just want to zoom through a little bit about tournament formats. I know that let's talk a little bit about draft, I suppose, as a high end part of the deciding factor when it comes to deciding the top 8 at a pro tour, at Worlds or whatever. Any movement on that, or is that just that's the way it is?
Oh, you mean if the top 8 were to be drafted?
Oh, no. I mean, like, just incorporating draft as part of the Swiss rounds in those types of majors, in those tier 4 events.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a lot of confidence in the draft format of Flesh and Blood, and it's pretty unwavering. So, to be quite honest, I think there's still a lot of opportunity for people to get more reps and to get better at drafting. So I don't see any reason why there would be any changes as far as draft goes in terms of its role in Premier Organized Play. Obviously, there's other aspects that are hard to argue about, like in terms of coverage. Like, I think in general, people enjoy following a CC match on stream and on coverage probably more than a draft match. That's just like, I think that's hard to like argue with. Like, there's obviously people that appreciate limited and can really understand a lot of the nuances of what's going on. But for people who just casually tune in and follow what's going on, I understand why people want to see CC. I know that we got tons of people in chat when we were doing the coverage of like Hartford and Liverpool, and they were all like, well, where's the battle hardened coverage of the CC thing and that sort of thing? And it's like, I understand you, I hear you, but we also have to take a moment to highlight like what's going on. And if we we're in the midst of a heavy hitter season at the time, and booster draft is going to be a big part of what was the RTN season. Like, we need to highlight this. Like, it's the product, right? So like, it's at the end of the day, right? Like, we're going to do what we think is best for best for the brand, best for the game. But yeah, draft will have a place, and I would encourage people to continue practicing and to continue getting better at drafting, because I think it's unlikely that you're going to be able to win a pro tour without winning some draft games. So
how dare you say that, Trevor? How dare
sorry.
you? All right. Let's go a little. Let's move into the expansion and growth of the game, because I think it's a major sort of flag to wave when you're talking about the growth of the game, the health of the game, the longevity of the game. The fact that 2024 is going to be heavily focused on the Japanese market. There's the world premiere for Miss Vale happening in Tokyo. We've announced Worlds in Osaka. The Japanese market being the second biggest market for TCGs next to the United States. Like, this seems obviously like the most logical place to go. I'm just curious what the significance of this means to LSS, to the people in the room, when those those decisions, those plans were then solidified that, hey, we are going to Japan. We will have a footprint there. We will have product in Japanese. This has to be huge.
Oh yeah, it's very it's very serious. I mean, yeah, we take this launch like very 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 seriously. It's yeah, I can't think of a market where we have invested more into the launch, right? Like, or at least if there was, it predates my time with LSS, right? Like as far as the amount of like resourcing and attention on all facets, right? Like Premier organized play is one piece, but one piece of this puzzle, right? But then you've got obviously marketing, and you've got the in-store components, and you keep layering in, and you've got distribution, and you've got all these pieces, and I talk to all these other teams as well because we have a lot of collaboration that goes into this very successful planning for the Messvale launch in Tokyo, and there's this it takes a village to make this all happen, right? And so we're quite serious about it. There's a lot of work that's being put into to having a very successful launch in Japan and in Tokyo here. And honestly, it's only about a month away, and obviously I'll see you there in Tokyo as well. But yeah, it's very serious. I mean, right after Liverpool, I was on a flight to Osaka immediately after that to meet with our Japanese tournament organizer there, Jiraful, and then we went and we toured the venue for the World Championship in Osaka, and we went and we toured the venue in Tokyo for the world premiere. So like we've put a lot of time and effort into like preparing for this sort of stuff. So yeah, I don't actually know what the specific question was, other than to say that like
it was
very significant.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows that this is definitely significant. I just think that this has to be probably, obviously releasing in the States, et cetera, but this had to have been something where, I mean, even when you walked into the company and you started getting your fingerprints on things, that this just had to be that marvel of an uncharted terrain that you guys really want to plant your flag on. And it must feel, after you've, I don't want to say conquered Japan from a TCG perspective, but at least get your feet wet there.
That.
Well, definitely not. I mean, like, let's be real. There's God knows how many other IPs that are just everywhere, but being there itself, having product, and just Japanese people are already playing the game, but having something there for them is a pretty big deal. Not to mention the fact that the product is now being printed in the Japanese language for them. I mean, it wasn't so much a question as it was, I just was wanting to get sort of a little bit of a vibe of, is this potentially one of the biggest victories for LSS to a degree, or one that you can maybe say, hey, like when you're reviewing what happened in 2024, the fact that you successfully launched the game in Japan as being maybe the highlight of the year?
I mean, it'd be a big milestone. I think we've got a lot of work to do before we say there was any like victories per se. But I think it's definitely a very important milestone in the story of Flesh and Blood, right? Like being able to plant our foot in Japan, and to really to bring this game forward in the native local language in Japan, for people to be able to play the game, to also have like localized communications, for people for there to be localized marketing, for people to be able to go out to their LGS, not have to just read a bunch of stuff on our website in English or something, but to actually be able to get the information they need in their local language, and to be able to play the game in the local language. I think these are all like very, very key and critical things to having a successful launch in Japan, having boots on the ground in Japan, having account managers there and localization managers within Japan to really help make this a successful launch. So, and having successful, tournament organizing partners within Japan. These are all like important things. So for us, I mean, I would say right now it's a very significant milestone. We'll see how we do. I think we, we're
Fingers crossed.
it's definitely like a tall order, right? Like to be able to stack up with everything else that's in Japan. It's like it's a very competitive space, but there's also a lot of opportunity as well, right? So you can you know how do I say this? It's like one of those things where we can be very successful in Japan and find success even if it doesn't mean that we are one of the top TCGs in Japan, right? Like it is a very competitive landscape, and if we can connect with our fans and connect with the community in Japan, and really just get the game out there in front of a lot of people, and to allow people to give Flesh and Blood a chance, I think is a big part of this, right? So like presenting the game in a positive way, showcasing the game, making sure there's enough awareness and visibility for FAB, because I feel like the more that we present the game, the more that we introduce people to the game, the more that we get people's hands on the game, the better the chance that we'll be successful in bringing people on board. So I think that's a lot of what is to come, and I think we can find success if we do a lot of the things right. So
sounds good.
Yeah.
A bunch of the questions that have come in, and I'm going to kind of group a couple of them together here, from Max Ferocity, from Cusco, both asking more or less kind of a similar question, which is when it comes to deciding locations. I think that this is definitely there's so many moving parts associated with it, be it, I understand some of the challenges of having a calling or a battle hardened in Canada. Trust me, I know. And like just the fact that there's one happening in Montreal at the end of May, I'm over the moon. Like that's where I grew up. So I'm going to be there. It's going to be amazing. But at the same time, I understand that it's not as simple as just pointing to a city, picking a weekend, and making it happen. Like if that were the case, I'm sure that you would rest so much easier, Trevor. I understand that it's not always that simple. But
probably wouldn't have a job either if that was the
case. The difficulty is also job security, I suppose. You do have a talent to sort of make this stuff happen, but you have to imagine that there's got to be some sort of science involved where it's not just an equation where you plug in numbers, but okay, like there's a region that we want to start pumping the tires on, but there's this city that maybe has a player base that hasn't been getting what it needs, and then there's this, there's that. What are those factors that go into deciding where a calling goes, let's say? And as an extension of that question, are events like Battle Hardens treated almost as auditions for bigger events?
So I can answer the second question like very quickly, and the answer is yes. Like Battle Hardens 100% are I wouldn't just say an audition, but more like a litmus test of like the market, and just like, let's see what the appetite is in this sort of, community. Like we know if we put a calling somewhere, there's going to be like a minimum number of people that might just like come because it's a calling, but let's see kind of the underbelly of like how engaged people are, and I feel like a Battle Hardened is a great way to assess the sort of local, regional kind of like engagement within that particular market. So, so that one is a pretty easy yes. Battle Hardens allow us to kind of test the waters. As far as some of the callings and callings Pro Tour World Championship sort of stuff goes, obviously, very easy for me to just say, obviously venue size and availability is probably one of the biggest puzzle pieces in terms of like building the overall like global calendar of events, right? Like we need to have the availability on the dates that we need, and there needs to be like venues of a suitable size and caliber. So these things are, we might want to go to a particular city or venue, but if it's not available when we need it to be, and sometimes it just doesn't work out, right? And a lot of the things that shape a lot of that decision making is based on our OP calendar, and what shapes a lot of the OP calendar is the product releases. So, if we know that we're going to have kind of like 3 big product releases each year, then and we have OP seasons that are built around those product releases, then we have kind of a rough sense of when do these pro tours or world championships need to take place, and then when do the callings need to take place. So those things inform a lot of the scheduling decisions, and then we go out and we get to work, and we start RFPing a lot of venues and destinations. So RFP stands for request for proposal. So we'll go out and we will figure out which particular venues and cities will bid best to host our events. Sometimes, if you already have a good enough relationship with a particular destination, it can be as simple as ringing them up. But if you are trying to shop something around, like a big event, say a pro tour, and you're curious about gaining interest in multiple cities, you might want to offer that out for multiple destinations to bid on, because you're trying to not just get like the best venue, but you're also trying to get attractive hotel room rates for guests and things like that as well, right? So you kind of have to look at the full picture of ease of access, and then also, once you're there, like the cost for people to attend the event, and things like that. And so there's a lot of factors that start to come into play in terms of the actual nuts and bolts of like making the deal and making it happen. So yeah, there's quite a bit that goes into it. I'm sure that if we had another couple hours, I could give a master class on some of this stuff. But it is probably one of the more challenging, but also one of the more fulfilling things that I get to do. We're getting pretty heavy into 2025 scheduling at the moment, and kind of penciling in a lot of the places that we need to be next year.
Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got a Battle Harden coming up soon. I encourage you to sign up for that Battle Harden, because I was just told yesterday that they've had to raise the cap of the Super Armory on Friday like 3 times already. There's already like 100 people that are signed up for the Super Armory on Friday. So there's a lot of people in Montreal.
They reached out to me to say, hey, like this was like a few weeks ago, and they're like, can you help promote this event? And I said, I would happily do it. I said, you are so far in advance. You're like 8 weeks out from this event. I don't think you have to worry about it, because I would imagine half the signups happen the week before. Like people are just trying to figure it out. And just to hear that they've already raised the cap on just the Super Armory is unreal. So that also is a nice indicator that I have to go ahead and actually sign up for that damn thing. But in general, no, it's great to see. Go to Montreal, friends. I highly recommend it. It is look, I moved away from it. I tell people all the time, Montreal is an incredible place to visit and not the best place to live, but you're only there for a weekend, so go and have fun. It is the Vegas of Canada. It's crazy. It's so much fun, is all I'll say.
Poutine. Yeah.
Oh God. And you talk to Flake. I will hook you up with the best places to get poutine. Don't mess around with that gourmet nonsense. The greasier the better.
There was another place in Montreal that I know that is really good. I think it's at the corned beef place or
Schwartz's.
something.
Is it
Yes,
Schwartz's? Yep.
yes, that's the one. That's the
Schwartz's smoked
one.
meat, world famous.
Yep.
Probably the best smoked meat you'll ever have in your life
Yeah.
is at
Yeah.
Schwartz's.
I
Yep.
ate there one.
On
Yep.
Saint
Yep.
Laurent Street, I believe it is. You want to go
Yeah.
there. It's Saint Laurent or Saint
Yeah.
Denis, I forgot, but either way, you
Yeah.
definitely want
Schwartz
to
is
go check
good.
that out. It's like
Yep.
standing room only. The lineup's out the door at all times. I promise you, they know what they're doing. They've been doing it for like 100 years. Get that
Yeah.
done.
I don't know. Just yeah. If I mean
Are you going to be
that's
there?
always the other joke. That's the other joke about where we choose like where we want events to be. It's like where do we want to go eat, right? Like that's always the running
It's a good
thing.
spot
It's
to
like,
go.
oh yeah, well Trevor's just picking these places because he wants to go and eat there or whatever. It's like, well,
I commend
yeah,
you on this, and I encourage it.
you're you're
There
not wrong, but
a couple more questions quickly from Heiner of White Rabbit out there in Germany. Go check out White Rabbit. Uh, with Calling Phuket turning out to be a great success, do you have any more ideas floating around regarding holiday events? Because this was like a vacation style event, which was cool.
it
So
was.
do you got any others floating around?
Uh, I mean, well, let me first just talk about Phuket a little bit. This was one of those shows where I knew that internally there would be a lot riding on like kind of like the success or failure of this show. So um, uh, I'm very happy that as many people were excited to go to Phuket as there were, because to be quite honest, if Phuket flopped, we would probably not be like approaching this conversation like in a positive way like very soon. So thank you first to everyone from Southeast Asia and around the world that chose to come to Phuket 2 weeks ago. I know you all had a great time. Really appreciate all the feedback that people have sent through. We've had like numerous people that have been very appreciative of the hotel, the venue, the beach, the food, the vibes, and everything. So thank you to everyone who took a chance on coming to Phuket, to Patong Beach, to have a good time with us. I really appreciate all of you that came and made it possible, because all of those people are going to be the reason why we can do this again. So,
Oh, it's a done deal.
so it's like very important, right? Like, the answer is yes, we will do another one of these again in the future. This was a little bit more of a complex one because the whole sort of like finding the destination and doing the negotiation with the hotel and the food and beverage part of it it's a little bit different puzzle than just booking like a convention hall and saying, hi, I want you know 30,000 square feet, whatever, blah blah blah, I'm going to have 800 people, yada yada. Like this was very much more curated, a lot more hands-on for me as far as being more involved with the negotiation and everything. So we'll do another one of these again. I mean, I hope that with enough time we can actually come back to Phuket again in the future. I don't think next year will be like soon enough, but maybe 2026 we could do Phuket again. We'll do it Phuket Electric Boogaloo #2. But yeah, we'll definitely find somewhere cool to go next year for a holiday. Not sure what time of the year it'll be, but for sure we will do another holiday destination kind of event. So,
Sweet.
Heiner, my friend from Germany, you will just have to stay tuned, and yeah, hopefully we will have somewhere exotic to take
Love
you
it.
in 2025.
I love it.
So,
All right.
yeah,
So I'm going to
yeah,
conclude it this way, Trevor, which is
yeah.
I'm going to ask you if there's, without any context or what it is, if you could maybe throw us some cities that will be getting events. You don't have to say what it is or when it is or whatever, but maybe some cities that are be getting events later this year or in 2025 that maybe have not had some just yet. Can you toss out any cities?
Well,
You
look, I kind of already spoiled one
Manila,
a little bit
yeah.
earlier. Yep. So the Philippines is going to be getting some love very soon. I hope we get to talk more about that once the deal is signed. But to our friends in the Philippines, we will see you soon. Look, there are a lot of places that we would like to explore more over time, right? Like I'm excited that this year, in the back half of the year, we have the opportunity to go to Chicago with MinMax. We get to do an event here in Portland with Fab Foundry. I'm really excited that we get to service some of these other regions that I feel like have a really great like Fab core. Um, Obviously, we get to go back to Florida later this year with the world premiere for Set 14 in Tampa Bay. That's going to be a great show. I hope that folks join us in Tampa Bay, Florida in September. Elsewhere around the world, there are a lot of important markets to us that we want to hit. That it's just taking time to get the deals done, right? Like, it's no lie that we have a incredible community in Hong Kong, right? Like some of the best players in the world live in Hong Kong, and we are working very hard to bring events to that market. There's challenges. It's whether that be availability, pricing, whatever. There are challenges, but for folks in that region, know that like we acknowledge that like we hear you, you're there,
Yeah.
And we want it to happen. Obviously, Malaysia, another big market that has a lot of support that we'd love to go back to or to visit in the future. Obviously, Brazil, we hear you. Keep showing up to your events this year. You've got a great national championship. You've got you've got a battle hardened coming up in August as well in Brazil. So please continue to show us your support in Brazil. In Europe, we are kind of doing our best to jump around the continent a bit. We definitely, there's some other places in maybe Eastern or Southern Europe that I'd like to see us explore, whether that be places in Italy or maybe in the Czech Republic or yeah. So or maybe even Scandinavia in the future as well. So we're continuing to seed a lot of these different markets. And the other thing we haven't really talked much about is we've been improving our convention presence as well around the world. And part of that is to also seed more players into Flesh and Blood around the world, so that it becomes possible to do more callings in a lot of these other regions. And then, Canada, another big one that we've got some challenges that we have to sort through, but it's a very important market to us that, we want to get to a point where we can, comfortably do a calling in Canada, but we've just got to sort some stuff out to make sure that's possible. So, I don't really have too much to tease here, unfortunately.
Yeah, Manila's good.
So, more information on the way, but I think if people are keeping score, we have like 2 or 3 callings for this year left to announce. So we got a little bit more in the tank, but we're paying attention to this stuff, right? Like I know a lot of people love to tag Brian or James or Fab TCG on Twitter. When's the calling coming to Chile? When's the calling coming to Brazil? When's the calling coming to wherever? It's like, we're not just like turning a blind eye to folks, right? Like we're paying attention to what's going on. Like if we genuinely feel that the market can support something and we can make the business side of it make sense, like we're gonna go, right? Like we're not intentionally trying to hold people back. But one thing that we will not do is we will not do something where where the event is not set up for success, right? Like it will be so much more damaging if we go somewhere and the event flops, and then internally we're like, wow, well, we can't visit this place for like 3 years. Like that would be horrible, right? So we want to go to places where we can, make a really positive impact. Because part of it's the game, part of it's the event that takes place that weekend, but really the big thing is the legacy that the event leaves in those communities and in those cities, right? And so, there's a lot of work that we still have to do to really build up into the climax of the event itself, but then also the sort of like legacy impact that these events leave wherever we go. So at the end of the day, we have a lot of places we want to visit over time. We want to make a successful impact wherever we go.
Sounds good. Hey,
that is a long-winded answer, and
people can do with it what they wish. There's definitely some Easter eggs to dig out of that one, so we got it.
Yeah.
I do want to thank you very much, Trevor. Thank you so much for the transparency, being on the show, and everything, man.
You can always count on me for some transparency. I'll just tell you how it is. So
I love it.
Yeah,
that's what we do here on the show.
I'm not trying to really hide anything here. So
I do want to give some instructions for the next giveaway, again, sponsored by The Realm Games. Go to therealmgamingnetwork.com. Last week we said, hey, what's your favorite Transcendence art? This week we're going to say, you know what? Trevor's talking about we're going to do another holiday. Where do you want to go for a fab holiday? What's a great destination for a fab weekend getaway? Tell us why. I don't want to see a city or Disney World. I want to know why. Again, thank you so much to our patrons as well. I appreciate you all. Trevor, thanks again for doing the show, my friend.
Anytime, Flake. I will see you very soon, I'm sure.
Very soon,
and,
yes.
Yeah.
Beauty.
It's a pleasure, and hey, maybe we'll catch up, in the back half of the year or something like that.
That's the plan. Beauty.
See where we're headed in 2025. So,
love it. Yeah. Friends, thank you so much for listening to the Instant Speed Podcast. Don't forget, you're not losing if you're learning, so keep playing the game. You might win. See you next time on ISP.
Well, I work